G'day folks, Wren here, and it is time for May's TBRGate. Alright, so it's another month, which means another TBRGate. If you have not seen my TBRGate before, I will leave the playlist down below. You can go and watch. Basically, TBRGate is a TBR game that I play every month, and it is based on my favourite TV show, Stargate Atlantis. Now, the goal is to create a 7-symbol address. If you've seen the show, you'd understand. But basically, minimums of 7 prompts every month. If I land on a chevron, then I have to pick a character card, and that book does not go towards the address. And if there is a hive ship on one of the symbols, then I have to pick 2 books for that prompt. It's basically the gist. First, before we get into May's TBRGate, rewind a bit, have a look at how I did in April. So April was actually a really difficult month for me. I was going through some pretty scary health issues, and they're still not sorted out, which is such fun. Yeah, I was a mess for a while there, and I physically, mentally could not read. Like, could not comprehend words type of can't read. So my reading struggled a bit in April, but we'll go through the books that I did or did not read, and we'll see how many hive ships I need to put on for May, because I can tell you now, I did not complete my April TBRGate. So the first book I was meant to read was Small Spaces for a female dominant prompt. I ended up DNFing this because this was the book that I was listening to when I had my very first attack of this particular health issue. It's kind of jaded the experience for me a little bit, because as I was listening to it, I'd apparently listened to 5 chapters and I had not understood a single word that was said. Sentences did not mean anything to me and nothing was making sense. And so because of that experience, I did have to DNF it, because I couldn't separate the book from my health issues. So I have DNF'd it. I'm gonna call it like a soft DNF, because I do really want to read that book. Then I had a chevron, and the character card I picked was Elizabeth Weir, and the prompt I decided to choose for her was Animal on the Cover. And for that I picked Promise of the Wolves. I didn't read it. I did not pick it up. I kind of immediately put it back on the shelves and was like, nah, not gonna happen this month. So that is my first hive ship. Then I landed on another chevron. This time I picked Dr. Katie Brown, and the prompt for her was a beautiful cover. And for that I chose Destiny Surrender, but I didn't read this either. So that is another hive ship. For the prompt standalone, I picked The Vegetarian, and I did read it, and I gave it 1 star. Then I got another chevron, because of course I did. And the character card I picked was Dr. Daniel Jackson, who is my favourite, and the prompt I picked for him was LGBTQIA2S+. And for that I picked I Hear the Sunspot Volume 1, and I did read this and I gave it 4 stars. Then for number in the title, I read Black Butler Volume 9, and I gave this 5 stars. For cultural diversity, I read Death Note, the Black Edition, Volume 2, and I gave this 4 stars. And for a new to you author, I was going to read The Kind Worth Killing, but I ran out of time, so that is another hive ship. Then for start a new series, I read Blood on the Tracks Volume 1, and I gave that 4 stars. And lastly, for shapeshifting, I chose Soul Eater Volume 18, and I did read that and I gave it 5 stars. At the end of the month, I have to put 3 hive ships onto the TBRGate, which, like, such fun, you know, it's exactly what I needed. We're adding the 3 hive ships, and let's start May's TBRGate. Okay, this is where I left off for April's TBRGate, so I have to add some hive ships. First hive ship goes on this chevron. I did not complete Elizabeth Weir's prompt. The second hive ship goes on that chevron because I did not complete Katie Brown's prompt. Now, I do have one more hive ship that I need to put on the board, but I don't own anymore. So I'm going to do what I did previously and use the handy dandy ZPM to remove one of the hive ships and place it on the spot I need it to go. I'm going to use this ZPM on that hive ship on Once L, because that is a prompt I don't like, so I don't want to have to read 2 books for it. So then I now have this hive ship free and I have no ZPMs, and this hive ship has to go up there because I did not complete that prompt. Alright, we have the puddle jumper at the top there ready to go, and let's go for Maze TBRGate. 6. First spin was Dawnry. So the first glyph I landed on was Dawnry, and the episode for that is Duet, and the prompt for that is LGBTQIA+. Duet is a very fun episode. Rodney gets another consciousness in his brain, and they're kind of, you know, 2 people sharing a brain and a body, and it is interesting and really funny. Rodney's actor, David Hewitt, is a fantastic actor because he does it so well, and of course the reason the prompt for this is a queer prompt is because there is a male-male kiss on screen, but it was the other consciousness kissing the person, and it was a thing. The book I decided to choose for this is Beauty Queens by Libba Bray. I really like Libba Bray. I love the Diviners series, and I've always wanted to read more from them. This is the one I happen to own, and apparently it's queer. I can't exactly remember how, but it is. So basically this is a bunch of beauty queens get stranded on an island and shenanigans happen. Sounds a little unhinged, but I'm kind of here for it. Alright, spin number 2. 11. Allura. The next glyph that I landed on was Allura. Episode for that being the Hot Zone, and the prompt for that being an ebook. Hot Zone is definitely one of my favorite episodes because there's a quarantine, and something about just people being stuck is really entertaining for me. So the reason I chose ebook for this prompt is because the virus is technological. So for ebook, I decided to choose The Consumption of Magic by TJ Klune. This is the 3rd book in the Tales of Verania series. TJ Klune is my favourite author of all time, but the Tales of Verania series is hilarious. It has some really, really funny main characters. It is kind of like that typical fantasy book with so much hilarity in it, and everyone's queer, which is great. I can't tell you much about what's happening because obviously this is the 3rd book in the series. I do highly recommend people reading this series. It's fun. There are dragons and magic and a gay unicorn. Spin number 3. 14. Of course. Of course. So I landed on Ekgesis, and that has a hive ship. Then the 3rd glyph I landed on was Ekgesis, with the episode being Runner, and the prompt for that being New to You Author. Now Runner had a hive ship on it, because of course it did. So with there being a hive ship on this glyph, that means I have to choose 2 books. So the Runner episode, I get this episode a lot, but this is where we first meet Ronan, who is a runner, which means the Wraith have put a tracking device in him and they make him try and survive while they're tracking him. So it's kind of like a sport for them, and it's not fun, but you know, Ronan lives, so that's good. So the New to You author. First one of these I chose was Horror Hotel by Victoria Fulton and Faith McLaren. Haven't ever read from them. This cover is great. And it's also weirdly short. I didn't think it'd be this short. This is about a bunch of teenagers going to a haunted hotel to film all of the hauntings. So yeah, they have a YouTube channel, The Ghost Gang. Yeah, they hunt ghosts, which is awesome. I love ghost hunting things. It appears that they might need to worry more about the living than the dead though, which is very, very fun, and I'm so looking forward to this. Then the second book I chose for this is kind of similar to Horror Hotel, as in this is another paranormal investigation book, and it's episode 13 by Craig DeLuey. This was a pretty recent release, I believe, and oh my god, the second I heard about it, I immediately wanted to read it, and I've had it on hold for so long and it's finally come in, so I'm so excited to read it. But again, it is a paranormal investigation TV show. So this book also seems to be a bit of a kind of mixed media deal, because this book basically sounds like if you were to watch a found footage horror film. Found footage is my favorite like trope in horror movies. I think they're so much fun, and this kind of sounds like that because, you know, it's going through all of the tapes that were found from this investigation team and in correspondence and notes and files that they made from this case. So you're left to assume that something happened to them, and they only have these little bits of information to find out what happened. And it sounds so much fun. Spin number 4. Do that again. 1. Abrin. The next glyph I landed on was Abrin, and the episode for that is Phantoms, with the prompt being mental health threat. Phantoms is a really interesting episode where people start seeing what they think are ghosts of the ancients, which is very cool. And there's also a whale-like creature that like Rodney befriends, and it's very fun. But some of those like apparitions are freaky, which was very cool. The mental health rep prompt for this was because at first a lot of the doctors on the base think that people are just kind of hallucinating from a lot of stress or something, so they don't treat it particularly seriously. But the book I decided to choose for this is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I chose this one because I'm pretty sure it deals with a suicide and a person having depression and all that kind of stuff. But this is about after a person dies, they get to go to this library and they are shown different versions of their life if they had taken a different route. If you made this decision instead of this one, this is how your life would have been. That kind of situation. And that is a really interesting concept to me, and I've heard lots of really good things about this, and I'm intrigued by Matt Haig's writing. Spin number 5. 3. Robandus. The next glyph I landed on was Robandus, with the episode for this being Hide and Seek, and the prompt being a dark cover. Again, I've talked about this episode so many times, but it's about this dark mist-like creature that is really hungry, so it eats like electricity or power or something like that, and you know, they're just trying to outrun it, so they turn off all the lights and everything's really dark, so hence the prompt. The book I decided to choose for this was What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. Now firstly, thank you to Paige for sending this to me. It's so kind of you. I'm so excited because look at this cover. Like, is that not the most horrifically beautiful thing you've ever seen? I've never read a T. Kingfisher before, and I'm really excited to. And this just sounds like a weird, creepy book, and that is my vibe. And this is supposed to be a reimagining of Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher. I have read that. I've read all of Poe's works. I don't remember it, so I might have to like rejig my memory before I read this. But there is something happening. There are some weird fungal growths and possessed wildlife surrounding a dark pulsing lake. That sounds cool. It's just creepy horror that I'm really in the mood for, and I have been recommended this a little bit and it's piqued my interest. Spin number 6. I'm going to say that's more on the 11. Zamillos. The 6th glyph that I landed on was Zamillos, with the episode for that being Tale of Rodney, the prompt for that being magical abilities. Now, the Tale of Rodney is one of my favorites because Rodney gets like magical abilities, and he's really like typical Rodney and kind of like egotistical about it, but he also helps out his friends when he can, and that is beautiful, and it's just such a good episode. I can't describe it more than that, but it's good. So for magical abilities, I decided to choose Playing with Fire, the second book in the Skullduggery Pleasant series by Derek Landy. Now, Max is desperate for me to keep reading these, and I did enjoy the first one, so I do want to continue with the series, and I almost like don't want to know what these are about, but this is about a young girl who was like the executor almost of her uncle's will, and her uncle had a lot of interesting dealings with some people, and in the first one she meets Skullduggery Pleasant, who was one of her uncle's friends, and he kind of introduces her to this whole world of the occult. but mainly because there was someone who was kind of terrorizing her, trying to find out something that her uncle had. So she has now been pulled into this world, and Skullduggery is helping her through it. So it is really, really fun, and I love a lot of the elements in this. Like Valkyrie, our main character, she's a badass, and I like her a lot. And there is lots of like magic and folklore and mythology and urban fantasy good times in this. So I'm looking forward to reading this. And also Max spray painted the edges himself. Like, doesn't that look cool? Alright, and what will hopefully be our very last spin. 5. Well, I landed on Dawnry again. That's already on this month's TBRGate, so I just have to spin again. 7. Of course, of course. I landed on Ekrumig, and that has a hive ship on it. So the final glyph that I landed on was Ekrumig, and the episode for that is the game, with the prompt being competition. Now this had a hive ship on it as well, so I have to read 2 books. Now the game is a really fun episode. It's basically John and Rodney have discovered the Atlantis equivalent of like The Sims in a way, but farm version. But it turns out to be real. You know, it's not actually an online game, they are actually giving instructions to real people and real villages. I needed 2 books for this, so the first one I decided to choose was Yu-Gi-Oh! By Katsuki Takahashi. I have read some of this already. This is 3 volumes in one, and I decided to pick the 3rd volume to read for this because I have read the others. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was my everything. When I was a kid, I watched the show, I had a really cool deck, it was awesome, and Max actually has the first few of these bound up editions, and I'm reading them for the first time, and I'm like, wow, I don't remember any of this in the show. But it's very cool. Basically, this kid Yugi like solves an ancient Egyptian puzzle, and he is then like kind of possessed by this Egyptian puzzle solver being thing, and it keeps like trying to play games with bullies to like teach them a lesson and stuff. We haven't gotten to the card game part of it yet, but I'm so looking forward to that, and it's just fun, and there are lots of games and competitions, so there's that. Then the second one I decided to pick was Iron Widow by Ziran J. Zhao. I have read the first 50 pages of this, started reading it in January, put it down because I was worried it would be a cliche YA book. Max has reassured me that it is not, and I'm now really keen to continue reading this because I was having fun when I was reading it. It was written well, I liked the characters, and this is basically about a girl taking revenge for her sister's death against these mecha-like creatures, and she has to be like in the running to be paired with the person that killed her sister. She's trying to do that, get revenge, and I think there's a polyamorous relationship in this, potentially. But yeah, I don't really know more than that, but I'm really looking forward to finishing this. So that was the TBRGate for May. I'm not going to pick them up and show you how many there are, because I'm beginning to not feel well, which is fun for me. Anyways, what are your plans for May? Let me know. Are you taking part in any readathons? Because I'm definitely not. I need to not for a while so that I can actually read some books. But anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!